couldn't believe this had happened.
It's sudden, it just hits you, it's a shock, and you just have to deal with it.
Yes, very much so.
Not just navigating through that, but it is such a traumatic loss.
Well, I cried. I, I am a crier. I want to stay right here in the middle of my emotions.
Hello, everybody. Welcome again to the All Mercy Psychiatry and Integrative Care podcast. Today, we are talking about grief, not just grief, but traumatic grief, meaning you're dealing with trauma and at the same time grieving. And we have none other than Kalea Elliott. I'm going to let her introduce herself. Welcome, and I am so pleased to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here. My name is Kalea Elliott. I am the Executive Director of Family Community Case Management, and I share a nonprofit. Well, I share the ownership with my husband, Lane, and I'm also a peer specialist and peer supervisor.
Welcome again. And you've been with us before, so this is not your first time. If you guys watch some of our webinars online, you will see Miss Kalea. She is my friend. She is my sister. We work together. We do a lot together, and we share a lot of similar passion. It's always a calming and safe space when she's around. I hope you all have people in your lives like that. Again, we're talking about traumatic grief. At All Mercy Podcast, we talk about anything relating them to mental health, not just mental health. Anything could be related to mental health because, again, what is health without mental health? The same way we take care of our physical health, that's the same way we should be taking care of our mental health. Because everything, no matter what it is, it will affect your mental health so that the goal is it doesn't lead to mental illness, because we all have to take care of our mental health. With each podcast, we start with an original quote, and the quote for today is "Storms are inevitable." Instead of avoiding the storms, please learn to sail through them. When we pick these quotes, we are actually trying to relate it to our guests. And by the end of our show, we'll see if that quote was appropriate for the day. Now, let me ask Ms. Kalea, to you, what is traumatic grief?
Well, traumatic grief is grief that is death that has resulted from a sudden and traumatic experience. And that experience could be anything from a car accident. We've had mass shootings in the community, in our, in our society. It can stem from that. It can stem from, abuse, but it's always sudden, and so we don't get the chance to prepare for them.
Right. It's not like you plan for it. It's sudden. It just hits you. It's a shock. And you just have to deal with it.
Yes, very much so. In dealing with traumatic grief, it takes you to a place to where not the normal planning and processing of grief you actually get to do. It's kind of seat of your pants. It catches you off guard, and you're having to navigate how you feel. And it changes everything about from your emotion to your physical, even spiritual. It changes those beliefs for you.
Right. And when we posted this, we have a lot of audience questions when we advertised this topic. And the first one was, what was the initial impact of the traumatic loss on your mental health and on overall well-being? What was your experience like on that?
It was complete shock. And numbness. Like I, I couldn't believe this had happened. And I had to, I had to go days without, kind of disassociating in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is this actually real? Yes, it's real. The shock of it, you know, always it takes my breath away. It makes me stop. It it makes me question, you know, why this happened to me. And
And who was this person?
this person was okay. She was my sister. She was my best friend,
Oh,
and her name was Kashana. Anytime I get to say her name and talk about her, it gives me great joy
oh,
because of who she was and what happened to make her death traumatic is that she I won't necessarily say seeing this guy, but the guy who murdered her would not take her rejection. She said no.
Jesus.
And he went to her apartment and he shot her. And so she was murdered in December of 2020. So and I was
When was the last time you saw her before?
well, the last time I saw her was probably the week before, and I helped her with her car. But the last time I talked to her, I was the last one to talk to
Oh,
her. And I love talking with her. I mean, she gave so many great ideas. And we could talk for hours and hours and
mm-hmm.
hours. And that I remember that conversation because we were looking at building our nonprofit. We're just in the very beginning stages, and she was very helpful in giving me a list of people of who I could go talk to in our nonprofit. And I was writing everything down, and she says, "Hey, I need to go upstairs real quick. I'll call you after a while." That's code word, literally. If you have a friend that is anyway like us, that's code word for go on about your day. I'll call you after a while.
Right.
And I never got the after while. I never called her back. She never called me back. I didn't think about it. But
Hmm.
to to make that traumatic, and she was found the next day in her apartment.
How, God, how did you navigate through the different stages of not just navigating through that, but it is such a traumatic loss.
Well, I cried. I, I am a crier. I want to stay right here in the middle of my emotions, and I cried. I was angry. I was a workable anger because you can do anything angry. You can raise kids. You can do all things angry.
Mm-hmm.
But I was workably angry, and I stayed in anger for a very long time. But I was hurt, and one thing that I could remember is, there were periods where I would just cry, and then there was periods where my tears would be dry, and I would still be sad, and I still had to
Crying
work.
inside,
I
even if
cried on the inside,
mm-hmm.
and I had to do that. But one thing I can say I did do that really wasn't healthy for me is because I am so self aware. I I sucked my tears up. I sucked my pain up because other people were hurting. And so I felt that I needed to be okay so everybody else can be okay. And everybody was looking at me and how I handled the situation, which in turn made it to seem like I was okay.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, I really was not.
And I can really imagine how, I can only imagine because I have not been in that space. And some of you can relate to it, that you're not just grieving, but it is a traumatic event that can make the grieving a little bit different. It's not like you have that stage where you see somebody sick and you're like, maybe this person is not going to make it. You plan, you prepare your mind, you go through some stages of grieving with that person and with yourself, and you tell your subconscious mind to be ready for something. But at this stage, when it's traumatic, it's like you are dreaming about something. It's like, okay, is this for real? Am I going to sleep and get another news? Is that something that you dealt with? Did you go through those moments?
Yes. Yes, I went through periods of, is this ever going to end? And I went through periods of going, I would go for drives. My favorite thing to do is to go and drive um, to the airport to see to airplanes land or places where there was a lot of trees. Because I deal with a lot of anger, I had to take time to go get a bat and go and do something really physical with a tree
To
and a
let
bat.
it out.
I had to let it out. Um, I'm not a big runner, but I will jump and I'm gonna flap my hands a little bit because I had to physically work these emotions out. I did not want to take them home to my family.
Mm-hmm.
My dreams were disrupted. It actually transversed into my work. Um, Me at the workplace, I would have constant anxiety and panic attacks, and to where I couldn't speak to
Mm-hmm.
anybody. And back then it was COVID, so we were working from home. So it was nothing for me to cut my screen off
Mm-hmm.
and go away from my keyboard for a moment to deal with myself, to get myself okay.
And that's why they say it's not just a mental or emotional thing, it is a physical thing as well. And going through this grieving and all this, what coping mechanisms helped you? I know it's not like I'm grieving today, it happened 2 years ago, it happened 4 years ago, it happened 10 years ago, and I'm over it. But I know that there are moments where it still hits you like yesterday. But going through those initial stages, what coping mechanisms help you deal with that?
Well, I do analogies, and my analogies and visual imagery help me out quite a bit. One of the analogies I have is um, looking at grief as this. I'm on a boat, and I'm on a boat in the water and in the ocean rather, because I need a big space for
Mm.
this. So I'm, selling the waves that do come in the water, and the water is life. So, and the waves are where we go through in life, the ups and downs. And I'm okay at this point. But what traumatic grief is that traumatic grief is the fiery comet or the meteorite that comes crashing to Earth, and it hits the water not too far in the distance, and I'm seeing the fire and the flames and the water that's coming from around it, and I'm still in my boat.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten out of my boat. I haven't been thrown out.
Mm-mm.
I've been tossed around inside my boat.
Mm-hmm. You're still grieving.
I'm still grieving. And so the waves that's coming from that impact, or the feelings and emotions and things that we've had to endure past the traumatic event. And these waves are huge, they're big, and I'm still in my boat and I'm riding each one of those waves. And some days I'm great, it's wonderful. And then some days I'm low at the bottom, but I'm still in the boat and I'm still riding those waves. But the beauty of it is that the further I get from the point of impact, which is time, the lower and smaller those waves become. They never diminish. They never go away. And the fact that the trauma happened never go away, but the waves that we ride do diminish down to a point where the ride is just a little bit smoother. And that's the one analogy that really has helped
Right.
me.
When the waves are smoother, when it's not as rocky as before, it's calming the storms inside of you. You're going through acceptance. You're going through, let me cry, but it's okay. Let me see how to move forward without her. Then there are days that you have stronger waves. It's coming again, or when it feels like it's so real. And during all these stages, was there ever a moment where you think that okay, the waves are low, it's smoother, but were there moments of obstacles where you're like, I just cannot get over this. I just cannot cross the next step. I just cannot let this go. Did you had some obstacles or some challenging moments like that?
I did. I had the honor and the privilege of preparing her to go home on her final journey home. Because her family could not get down here. And I didn't want to send her any kind of way. This is a woman who dressed impeccably and had high standards for how she dressed. And I loved it. And so I wanted her final journey home to be without fail. That was also the hardest thing I could have ever done for anybody. I did not want to do it, and there was times I cried to my little sister because that she's one of my support people. There was times I cried to her and saying, "I don't want to do this. This is not what I signed up for." But to realize that she trusted me that much to make sure that her final journey home was something that I could do and I could take care of for her. So thank you, I made sure that how she went home said something about her. She was a queen. I picked out her jewelry. I picked out her dress. I wanted it to where when her mother and her father saw her, they didn't have to do anything. She was perfect the way she is. And to this day I talk with her dad. And to this day he's so grateful. And her sisters, they're so grateful. And I didn't do this to be grateful. I didn't do that to be grateful. I did it because that was my sister. And I would love a fraction of what I gave if the shoe was turned on the other foot. Just a piece of what I gave.
I can only imagine how that's not something that you planned to do, but you had to do it. I can only imagine how you're grieving, you're going through this traumatic loss, at the same time you're planning for a funeral and trying to put yourself in a space where she has to be that queen of yours, looking like she would have loved to look. It takes something inner. It takes a stronger strength that sometimes we don't even realize that we possess. It takes a superhero in us or in somebody to go through all this pain, yet be so selfless to navigate it like that. And I hope that gave you some peace.
It gives me, well, the peace I have comes from the Lord. And with that understanding, I know where she is. There wasn't a doubt in my mind because this woman loved going to church. She loved God. She loved praising. There's one thing about her in church. in church, she would go, Amen, Pastor. It was so funny. And that's one of the things I loved about her. She just how she worshiped God helped me to worship God to my fullest and helped me in my walk where I was not sure and build that confidence I needed to walk forward and in being a believer and just watching her and watching her go through her story and it changed how I went through my story, with a more grateful heart. That being said, I also had a peace in knowing that she's with our Father. She's no longer suffering. And I will see her someday. And at the end of my journey, whether that's now, whether that's long time from now, I'll get to see her and along with my family members that have gone before me at the end of my journey, and she's gonna be there.
Since this happened as a shock, sometimes we go through a lot of shocking moments and we wish that had I known I would have done this, had I known I would have said this, had I known I would have shown this. Especially because we are not prepared and we don't know the unforeseen and we don't know the unknown. But when it hits you and it's reality, you start wishing, if I had known, I would have done this. Were you ever in that space where you're like, I wish I had done this? If I knew that I would not talk to her the next day, if I knew that when she said, oh, I'll call you back later, if I knew that that was the last time I was going to speak with her, did you have those moments of had I known?
Believe it or not, that's something I battle with to this day. And the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and the guilt that comes on the side of that. And I get told there was nothing that I could have done, and nothing. I had to understand there is nothing that I could have done that could have prepared me for what happened. And I'm a very protective person. Had I known someone was following her or stalking her, she could have come to the house. Me and my husband would have done this, that, and the other. Our church family would have come together and done this, that, and the other. But in the end, nothing, and I do repeat this, nothing that I could have done would have prepared me for what had happened. And I had to understand, and it's still something I battle with to this day, that nothing that I could actually do would even change that fact. And it's such a hard thing to come to grips with. If you battle with shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and guilt, it's a guilt because that means that we're powerful and that we can do things and change outcomes, but in the end, that's not an outcome that we could have changed. And I had to understand and accept that it was out of my control. This was not something that I had direct control in.
How can you isn't she powerful? It's difficult going through moments like this and sharing such a personal journey. We appreciate you. We hope that someone will be impacted by this story. Nothing that we talk about here separates us from you. Just to say that you're not alone in whatever journey, whatever crisis, whatever is going on, you're never alone. We want you, as you're listening to this and going through traumatic grief, or if you're grieving or going through some kind of trauma, or you have already been through that, please find some space where you can continue healing, not avoiding the grief, but process it and heal through that. And that leads us to our next audience question. What advice would you give someone who is going through traumatic grief?
First thing I would say is exactly what you just said. Realize that you're not alone. My church family, my family, my sisters, my brothers, my children, my husband, they were so important to me. And they made sure that I was okay. My mother came and helped me plan. My husband stood, he didn't say a single solitary word, but he stood there stoic, adding his quiet strength to the situation. Oh, and his knowledge, because when he did speak, he did have a lot to say. and and my sisters, I each called them, and they helped me process through my children. And my children are adults now, but my children helped me to continue to find purpose. My church family, my mentor, and believe you me, I have a very strong and positive support system, and that's something that I had to build. Walking through traumatic events, it's important to realize you do not walk this by yourself. Build a strong and positive support system for you, what you need, and how a family can best support you in your traumatic grief is allow areas where you can just be. You're not required to be a super mom, and you're not required to be the best sister or the best friend in those moments. We are human, and in those moments, it's very important that we remain true to our emotions, how we're feeling, be in the moment of our emotions so that we can process through. And in our families and friends and support systems can allow us these moments to best process our emotions out.
And I know you're talking a lot about the support systems. Sometimes not everybody has family or supporting friends and all that. Please create those moments for when things like this come. It doesn't have to be for traumatic grief. It can just be as you navigate through lives, you have obstacles, you have challenges, have that support system that we all need and we can all count on. And sometimes, like our profession, me and you,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes maybe friend support is not there or not enough. Maybe family support is not there or not enough. You can, maybe church support is not there or not enough, even the community support. Then you can always count on professional help.
Exactly.
You can always count on professional help. You had family, you had church, you had all that. How do you communicate with them on how on how you want to grieve, or going through that grieving process and they are showing concern, and I know it comes in different ways. How do you tell them about your grieving? Some people can be not minimizing your grief or be insensitive, but think that this is the way you should be grieving. How do you channel that? How do you tell them this is how I'm feeling? This is what is going on. How do you talk to them about grieving?
I actually am a pretty communicative and vocal person. And one thing that I have to remember and remind people is that there is not one set way that you grieve. You own your grief experience, whether that's you crying and wailing, because some people do. And I'm going to be honest, I'm a wailer. I will cry. And if it's an emotion that hits me that strongly, oh, I'm definitely going to cry. but I own my grief experience. My grief experience may be different from yours, but you own that experience for yourself. You may cry, you may read, you may drive in the distance, you may go and sit and be to yourself, you may be around friends and family, you may not. But that is how you grieve. Second, how friends and family, or better yet, how we can communicate this to friends and family. Let's talk about it. Let's communicate that out. Let them know, hey, this is this is the grief process that I'm going through right now. I'm angry. I understand that I'm angry and I understand, but I do genuinely love you. What I need in this moment is this. I can either provide some empathy, sympathy, or a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm going through these moments, these are the three things that I require: empathy, sympathy, or a plan.
And it's not easy going through those moments.
No, no, not at all.
And people, especially receiving that empathy or that sympathy from somebody, people show it in different ways.
Well, they also have to understand that they must respect where you are in
Right.
your grief.
Right.
Respecting where you are in your grief is like you are acknowledging what you need in the moment, what they can provide for you in the moment, and y'all keep it at that.
Yeah.
We don't want to change anything. We don't want to change anything or anybody.
You know how somebody can be like, "Oh, you've been grieving for too long. Stop. Wash your face. Come on, let's go out." When maybe that's not what you need at that time.
No, and there's no time frame on grief. Grief can. I've been in my grief journey now for 3 years. There's no time frame on that.
Mm-hmm.
Some people go in their grief journey for 20 years, or even longer. The time frame on grief is not set by a specific standard by society. It's set on the standard that we set for ourselves.
Absolutely.
And so we have to understand that the road to grief is never linear. It is a
And it's
squiggly
not
line
the
of a
same.
T-road.
It's
Oh
not.
gosh, no.
It's not the same.
No, everybody processes grief differently.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone understands grief differently. So the grief process for me and you may be okay. You may be okay 3 months from now, whereas 6 months from now, I'm still suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, my I'm still suffering took me into 2022. So it took me 2 years for me to just say, okay, I might possibly be sort of kind of okay, and be able to smile and start to enjoy life and not feel guilty
About
because I'm still here and
Mhm.
she's no longer here.
Right.
I had to turn that into a way.
I really
Yeah, I
like
had
that
to
you
do
said
this.
not feeling guilty, because even though sometimes things happen that we understand that there was nothing we could have done, absolutely nothing we could have done, at the end of the day we still feel like, I wish I was there that moment to stop that from happening. You still have some little guilt feeling. So yes, it's good that when you're grieving or going through something, when you go through the different stages, let guilt be what you process as well, and accept that you could not have changed it. And this leads us to another audience question. How has going through this traumatic event changed your perspectives on grieving, on relationships, and on your mental health?
Mm. I it made me slow down and think.
Mm-hmm.
It made me understand what I need in the moment. I am. At first, I was really, withdrawn, and I don't tend to
Reserve.
Yes, I reserve, and I tend to sit and people watch quite a bit. But now I'm a lot more vocal, and not in a bad way. You know, I'll still sit and observe people, but I'm peaceful with it. I understand life a lot more and understand that I don't have to hold the pain as tight as I did. I don't have to hold the fact that she is gone so tight as I did. I can release it back into the world. And it's kind of like I'm releasing my love back, which is another one of my analogies where, you know, things that bring me pain, the fact of her loss, the events of her loss, I hold them like I would hold my grandson. You know, bring them in, give them a really big hug, and I hold them there for a minute. And I look at them and I go, I love you so much. And and I release it back, and I'm not releasing the pain back into the world. I'm releasing my love back. I have changed the fact that that is painful back into the world for it to have a totally different purpose. It's in a purpose of love. It's not in a purpose of hurting anybody. And so
and it's releasing that pain from you as well, like letting go.
It is. And it's not that I let go of her. Grief, in a sense, is just love without a place to go. But my grief is never left a place. It's always going to be with her. And with her, I change how I hold memories. I remember every smile. I remember every laugh. I remember sitting for hours at Wendy's talking about nothing. I remember her every Thanksgiving coming with her Tupperware bowls and taking off my leftovers, which I enjoyed because I didn't have to put them up. I enjoy.
I hope you all have friends like that in your life, and great memories.
And that's what you hold on to. You hold on to those good memories, those conversations. Don't hold on to the pain. It's harder and it's heavier to hold on to that pain and that loss. And we must find ways that we can channel it and turn it into love so we can be released back into the world, into something a lot more positive that serves you. Not so much as that it serves everyone else. It will eventually, but does that release of that love serve you?
Absolutely. And releasing the pain through love, especially through all those memories. That way you can still be functional and move on and not get stuck in a place where all you can think of is the pain. Thank you so much for sharing that, because sometimes things happen. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to cry. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to understand that this is a huge storm. How do I move past this? But the choice is still ours at the end of the day. Are you going to let it crush you? Or are you going to say, this is huge? I will try my best to roll it over slowly but surely and keep moving forward. Because what is not okay is to stay in that spot and grieve forever or feel the pain or the hurt forever to the point that it stops you from being functional or to honor those good memories. So an audience question that I want to ask you, Kalea. It's personal. You may answer, you may not answer. The audience wants to know if that person who shot her was ever punished, and did you feel better if they were punished?
Ooh, yes. In 2023, he was convicted of murder and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. How I felt, let me make this clear. Nothing, no judgment could have ever changed the fact that she is gone. But the fact that he will not be out to hurt another single person, it gave me a sense of relief. and I could breathe a little deeper. And mind you, this is the first time on a public aspect I'm sharing my story.
Oh.
And I wanted to make sure that, you know, everything that I've done in this entire event has been intentional. I wanted to make sure that nothing impacts him going away. I didn't want him to hurt another person. I didn't want another person to have to experience what I experienced. And I wanted to make sure that this chapter closes, and it closes successfully. Um, her best friend and I worked hand in hand to make sure that he did not get back out, and he's not going to hurt another person. And I thank God for that progression.
Yeah.
I thank God for the prosecutors, and I thank God for the district attorneys. I thank God for everybody who made sure that this chapter closes and does not open again for somebody else's family. Because unfortunately, it did for her.
Right.
It did. This was a chapter that should have stayed closed and it
Right.
opened back up. And unfortunately, she was a casualty of that. But for him, he won't be able to hurt another person. And it didn't just hurt me, and it didn't just hurt her family. It didn't just hurt our church family. It hurt everybody that this event touched, including the murderer's family. It hurt them too. And I'm knowledgeable and
Okay.
cognizant of that as
Of
well.
that. Mm-hmm.
And I can't take ownership of only that. I take ownership that the chapter closes, and I take ownership of my part in helping that chapter to close.
To close. Wow.
Yeah.
That is a lot to go through.
Now, on the other side of that, it has helped me to build purpose. It's changed.
Which is what I wanted to ask next. Like, going through this process, what do you want to share with our viewers? Healing, meaning through traumatic grief. How did that build you up? What purpose did you get from all that?
I work with my husband in our nonprofit, and our nonprofit does more than just individual and family therapy and case management.
I know that.
We also deal with domestic violence victims. And my analogy,
I just want to give a shout out to you and your husband. I have seen your work without getting paid. I have been through some of it selflessly, up and down, without getting paid, but getting people out of the streets, making sure they have some health plans, making sure they have a home. I want to applaud you and your husband for everything that you guys do.
Thank you
The
so
community, our community needs more of that. Now, sorry, I had to interject that.
So, a part of our business is the operation of a resource line, and this resource line helps us to navigate resources within the community and make them a little bit more cohesive for both our clients, our community members, and as well as, you know, anybody within the region of DFW. That being said, a part of our resource line helps with domestic violence, and women can call that domestic violence line, and we would directly help them to get out of situations. My husband and myself have gone and removed women from their situations and move them as far as 10 if we needed to at 12 o'clock in the morning, and then get home till 3, kind of selflessly. We've sat at the hospital with women, because my analogy is I could not save the one that I wanted to save, but if I just save one, I'm saving her. And I talk through with women. I process with women. We game plans together. We strategize, and we understand that, hey, this is not where we want to be, but what is it where we want to be? We want to go ahead and get there. And getting out of this situation is what really was important was to hire, and not continue to go back into those situations. So we teamed them up after we removed them and get them stable. We teamed them up with a case manager to help them get any community resources they need. We
Mm-hmm.
teamed them up with therapists to help them process emotions and things like that. Skills training with our life coaches to help them continue to navigate through and build better purpose for themselves, as well as employment with TWC and help them to navigate these areas. Assistance with childcare, we help them apply for these programs so that
Mm-hmm.
they can get the help that they need, so they don't have to keep going back into the dangerous situations that they're
Mm-hmm.
in, and helping them to see value in their lives and build their purpose for themselves, so that the one that I couldn't save, I'm saving her many and many
Many
times over.
times.
So
Many times. And I don't know if people realize how hard this is. Getting those phone calls at midnight when you're already sleeping, you get up. Or I know your husband, he gets up, he's gone. And if you were people that are on medication, you guys are making sure that they are getting back on medication. But above all, what I really admire what you guys do is making sure that they are safe. I have seen you guys do that, making sure families are safe, making sure women are safe, especially with their children. Putting in all that time, extra time that you're not being paid for. The kindness of your hearts and of your organizations has spread through a lot of communities that I know of. And I'm glad that you guys are expanding. We need more of that. We need so much more of that. What can you tell the listeners? What can you leave them, especially those going through grief and sharing this story, which is so dear and so personal to you? What can you hope that our viewers get from this?
understand that it's not always gonna be like this, and nobody has ever prepared you for the the days and the weeks and the months and the years that you're gonna have to go through. Understand the support systems that you build need to be positive and understanding for you. And if you don't have them, your community does have resources. There's NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness. That's
Mm-hmm.
one. And also your local mental health authorities in your areas. These are professionals that can help navigate through these areas of
Mm-hmm.
traumatic grief, so you're not sitting by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But you gotta do the work. You can't sit there and want it and not make a single step. The steps are scary, they're hard, and they're large, but they're so much worth it. And any step you take to get well, you're not losing the person that you loved. The person that you love does not want you to go through how you're feeling right now. They love you. And so it's important to keep hold of the memories, the good memories, the wise words, the long conversations, everything that you took of them that you hold dear, you remember and hold on to that. The loss, we release the loss back into the world, into something more positive. Love.
Mm-hmm.
And your grief always has a place. It's with them.
Right, right. And sometimes in life, we say when you go through something, you learn something from it. You didn't just pass through a bridge. While you were going through that bridge, you learned something from it. What I want to ask you is, it happened to you. Was there any moment in time where you think that it happened for you?
Ooh, it has changed my perspective on how I operate and navigate myself.
Right.
Is that's a big question. I never really explored it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's changed who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm no longer Kalea, this little mild mannered little woman. I'm Kalea of force, and I'm also Kalea, a peaceful woman.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Kalea that understands, and it's changed me on my cellular level. You know that I can still hurt, and it can still
Absolutely.
hurt, and
Absolutely.
I can still be okay. And I'm gonna have to go through my steps. I'm gonna have to go through my process, but I don't let it. I don't let it kill the joy that I have on the inside of me. To allow somebody to do what they did, to murder somebody, and to not hold the joy that I had for them, it means that they win,
Mm-hmm.
and they win to me,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't get to choose that.
Because they're still hurting you. They did not just hurt
Exactly.
that person. They're
Exactly.
still hurting you day in, day out. Even though they are incarcerated,
Mhm.
they still have that power over you to hurt you over and over.
Mhm.
Right. And where can our audience find you?
You're able to find me at Family Community Case Management, and also on our website, fccmdfw.org. And we're located in Bedford, Texas. Our address is 211 Bedford Road, Suite 300, Bedford, Texas 76022. And our
Are you
phone number.
online?
Oh yeah, of course.
Mhm.
We're online. We're on Facebook at FCCM DFW. You can also find me, but I keep my things pretty light and pretty funny on purpose.
We want funny.
And you can find me at Kalea.Elliott on Facebook.
So, thank you guys so much. It's not always easy sharing a personal story, especially one that kind of stopped your world, especially one that reshaped who you are, especially one that made you cry and still crying, and you don't know when you will ever stop that grieving process. But the beauty is that sometimes, like Aliyah says, we go through the pain in love and we don't hold ourselves captives due to what happened. Anything can happen to disrupt your life, especially your mental health. And remember, mental health is not something we talk today and stop talking about it tomorrow. Mental health is a journey. And I say together, let us all take the wheels and ride well together. Thank you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here, my sister.
Yes.
And together we are going to do a lot in the community. I don't know if I can do as much as you're doing, but I think I do mine in my own way, and you do yours in your own way. And I know that your sister wants you to do this for her, not to sit and cry every day. You're celebrating her memory. You are living her life the way she will want you to live. I bet you she will not want you to sit home and cry every day. You could not save her, but you are saving so many. So many. And sometimes those that you are saving, I've seen them not even say thank you. Maybe they think, oh, because you have this organization, it is your job. But I want to thank you for everything that you're doing. I know it is hard, and The biggest thing that I know about you is your heart. You have a very big heart. There's a lot of space there for many people. I want to applaud you. Keep it up. Let's take the wheels and ride well together. Bye, everybody. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you.